Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm super excited you could be here. Look, we're going to save you a lot of money today. Actually, we're going to be talking about how to turn tax strategy into a competitive advantage for your business, how to not overspend, how to kind of underspend on taxes, but do it the right way and legal way. Look, the problem I find is too many entrepreneurs, too many business owners are working with accountants that are just kind of basically crunching numbers and then telling what they must pay or what they must do. There's no strategy involved. And you want to have strategy involved because that's what saves you the money. It's what helps you think preemptively about what may happen and actually strategize and prevent bad things happening, like you overpaying too much money to people you don't want to pay. So today we are going to make sure that you have the right strategy for your business. And with us to make that happen is Tyler McBroom. Now, Tyler's actually a CPA, an entrepreneur, and CEO of TRM CPA, a premier tax advisory firm that helps business owners legally save millions while scaling profitable companies. Now, Tyler's actually known for simplifying tax strategies into very clear, actionable steps. He empowers entrepreneurs to keep more of what they earn and build long-term wealth. Now, you see, he has successfully scaled two businesses past $5 million in under 5 years and leads an award-winning firm recognized as one of America's best workplaces. Now, with a rapidly growing social media audience of over 900,000 followers, Tyler actually shares practical insights on tax strategy. He's going to be talking about business growth, financial decision-making as well. Now, as the author of Cash Flow and Grow and a trusted advisor to high-level entrepreneurs, he is on a mission to help founders make smarter financial moves and create sustainable success. Tyler, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Ty, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited you can be here, man. You are rapidly growing online because of the philosophies and strategies that you have. But let me talk about this. Like, how did you get here? Like, how did you first get your start in this segment and actually helping people save money on taxes?
Yeah, so I kind of like to say I sort of grew up in the business. My dad always had a CPA firm since I was 3 months old, and of course, growing up in that, I wanted to go as far away from that as possible and was like, I don't want to put numbers into a box. Actually got my degree in creative writing, which is about as opposite of accountant as you can get. And then when you have to pay your own bills, you realize that maybe having a job that can earn some income is not such a bad thing. So tried a few different things, went and got my master's in business, started taking some tax courses, worked for another firm for a little bit, and then had the opportunity years ago to go partner with my dad. And through that process, really saw kind of early on that there was an opportunity in social media to start putting out free tax advice. And so did that when I was partners with my father. That was actually to be 10 years ago this August. Over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, kind of took his firm from 4 team members to 47 people over 4.5 years. Through that process, became partners with Tony Robbins, and then kind of blew up on social media, and then did my own tax planning. I used to live in California, moved to Florida in 2021. And at that time, it was kind of time for kind of family to be family, business to be business. Decided to start over and kind of kept my partnership with Tony Robbins and my social media accounts and started over the week I moved from California to Florida, which I don't recommend starting a brand new firm the week you move across the country, but here we are. And, it's been really a really fun journey being able to meet with and help so many business owners all over the country. Of course, speaking on Tony Robbins stage is a lot of fun too. And it's just been fun. I went into creative writing because I wanted to write books and maybe, get into the whole creative fields and movies. And I never thought that I'd be speaking on big stages when I sort of became an accountant. I kind of went that route, but now it's been a fun kind of full circle. And that's actually been a unique sort of a competitive advantage for me in the having the creative writing skills, because at the end of the day, everything's communication. And if you can communicate clearly, complex things like taxes, it kind of helps you actually connect with people a little better. So
I love that. That's such a phenomenal story. And hopefully you're enjoying the tax savings of living here in Florida versus where you came from in California, because that's a night and day difference.
It's been a big improvement, that's for sure.
So Tony Robbins, it's interesting you bring him up because I followed a lot of his stuff and I kind of fall out and come back in. Right now I'm back in. I'm actually listening the second time to like one of his seminars right now. So it's really timely that you said. So what got you associated with Tony Robbins?
Yeah, so I would say it's a cold email and 3 years of following up. So, so I, back when I did become partners with my dad, he said to me, Tyler, I don't want to take a cut and pay to bring you on as a partner, so we got to grow. So I took that seriously and started looking for different ways to grow. And one of the ways that I kind of decided to experiment in was joining some different mastermind groups. And I got into this one mastermind group and got known as the tax guy in there. And so they asked me to teach a 90-day tax and personal finance course. And I said, okay, I'll do that. That sounds good. I might get some clients from this. And then half the people who signed up were Canadian. And I don't know a lick of Canadian tax law. And I was like, well, how do I provide value to these people? And so I went into this Facebook group of accountants and said, hey, is there any Canadian CPAs that might want to do a guest appearance for a week or two? Probably get some clients from it. And the guy that I got connected with and raised his hand and said, I'll do it, was the Canadian partner for Tony at the time. I said, tell me about this Tony Robbins thing. And so he told me how great it was for the business. Tony talks about the importance of getting a second opinion on your taxes. And he's like, we meet with hundreds of business owners. Everyone who goes to the business mastery event gets a free tax assessment, second opinion. And I said, well, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. We do a lot of tax planning, provide a lot of value for our clients. How do I become part of that? And he gave me the name of the name and email of the original founder, which was the Australian partner in this Global Accounting Advisors Alliance that Tony had. And so I emailed him. He wrote back and said, let's get a meeting on the calendar. And it was at 10:30 at night our time because he was in Australia. And the day before the meeting, we emailed him, and my dad was like, "Hey, that's a little late at night for us. Can we reschedule to a time that overlaps our business hours?" And and they said, "Sure, no problem." And we didn't hear from him for 3 years. If you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event, they go to like 2 a.m., right? And so, so we learned a very valuable lesson that day, which was, if you get an opportunity, just stay up late and, go for it. But in the meantime, kept looking for different other ways to grow. And I kept pinging them about once a month. Hey, can we get that meeting? A month later, hey, can we get that meeting? Another month later, can we get that meeting? And no response. And so that's when I started putting out content on social media. And so really started taking off and, hey, I wanted to follow up. Can we get that meeting? I'm at 10,000 followers. I think I'm providing a lot of value to the business owner community. Nothing. Hey, a couple months later, I'm at 40,000 followers now. Here's my content. I think we provide a lot of value. Nothing. Hey, here's an article I wrote for Forbes. Can we get that meeting? Literally nothing. And so for 2.5, 3 years, no response, but I kept following up every month or two. And then out of the blue in summer of 2019, his assistant replied and said, hey, are you free next Tuesday? And I said, yes. Don't care what time. So we hop on the call, and
I have to interrupt. What time was the call, just out of curiosity?
It was in the afternoon. It was, they met, they overlapped our business hours. So our wish was granted. It took 3 years, but our wish was granted. And they said, give me an update on your numbers. And by the way, in the meantime, in those 3 years, we'd grown from 4 people to 24 people as far as our head count and our team. And they said, we had a partner that didn't work out. If you can hop on a plane in 2 weeks to the next business mastery event, we've been following along, pending some extra due diligence that we have to do in that time. But if you can make it to the event, the partnership's yours. And so it was my daughter's first day of kindergarten. I didn't want to miss that. And so took her to kindergarten and then hopped in the Uber and drove to the airport and was in the back of the car, emailing back and forth with Tony's attorneys to get kind of our simple agreements in place so that they could set up some chairs. And then, hopped on the plane and landed in Vegas, and we were partners with Tony Robbins.
Wow. That's a great story. I love that. I love every moment of that. So how was that first business mastery event?
It was mind-blowing, right? It was just being like literally, so now I'm the partner that has the opportunity. I speak on the Tony Robbins stage, and so like now I speak, and then we get all of our appointments. But I remember very vividly, like the first time it was the Australian partner who used to give the global accounting advisors like tax planning session, and literally he walked off stage. And the whole crowd, we were sitting at tables in the back, and they were just like sprinting to the back of our tables to talk with us about taxes. And it's like, I've never seen anything like this in my life, right? And so that was quite the experience. And then we're just meeting with, hundreds of people over the course of, 3 or 4 days. And it was, quite the journey. And then, fast forward a year later, and I ended up on the stage getting to speak with him as a result of COVID and PPP loans, but that's its own separate story.
Well, that's interesting. I love you sharing. I think it's cool just how one thing, turns into another and it develops like that. So
Yeah.
what do you think is one of the most interesting things, or maybe a few of the most interesting things you've learned through that experience, especially when it comes to Tony Robbins?
Yeah. I mean, first off, the saying is, and it's an absolutely true saying, the fortune's in the follow up, right? So like the 3 years of following up, and it's been interesting because I've seen in my business, there's kind of something magical about 3 years. Like even now I run Facebook ads to grow my business, and it took 3 years to really get them profitable, of testing and trying different things. So something I've learned through that process is, if you really want something that's worthwhile, like that's going to massively change your life or your business long term, it takes a while of working at it and testing and trying. And so that's been something that's been proven to be true over the lifetime of my career as a business owner. And then definitely following up. One thing I've learned from just being close with Tony and being able to text him and be kind of connected with him, and seeing how he runs his life and his business is that, and a lot of people say this, but I've seen it in real life practice, what it looks like for someone at his level. He is obsessed with, how do I deliver massive value? And it is just true. It's like, how do I, so like if he's texting me, it's at 2 a.m., right? And he's been going all day, and he's been just like looking for different ways to add value and just like pour into other people, and how do I contribute to them? And so that's been a huge lesson in, just seeing and being in proximity to working with someone who's on the level of, a Tony Robbins. And so that's been really valuable. And then, the lesson of just operations, of going from just being kind of a CPA firm who we were growing a lot, right? We grew from 4 people to 24 people in 3 years in that first firm, but then having to suddenly onboard 100 clients in 1 week is its own brand new level of challenge. It's a great challenge and a great problem to have, but it still provides challenges. And so learning just ways to like ask the right questions to say, not can we do this, but if we had to onboard 100 clients in a week, how would we do that? And by asking that question, you end up figuring out ways to do it. And so those are definitely some lessons that I've learned along the way that have been really valuable. Towards.
Yeah, I love that. And Tony Robbins is one of the things he teaches, is how you need to rephrase the questions that you're asking, and how that rephrases the answers that you get, which I think is really interesting. And so I just out of curiosity, 'cause I have a close relationship with my dad. What did your dad think about this? Like, I mean, you joined, he went from, trying to say, we got to grow this thing to be able to afford to basically bring you in, to doing kind of what you've been able to do with social media and Tony Robbins. So do you like, what does he say about that? Like, what kind of feedback do you get?
Yeah, it was, he and I had a great time working together and growing the firm. And I think that it was kind of fun. I don't know that I remember we'd set this big revenue goal that we thought was a huge revenue goal. Like it was 4 years after I became a partner, and we hit it in 2 years, and then we like almost tripled it, after by the time we actually had the deadline. And so it was really fun kind of seeing, like, we set these big goals, and then it ended up being more than we could have possibly thought. And so that was really cool to like, and I learned a ton from him. And, he's owned a firm for, my whole life. And so there's not that many people that own a business for that long and are able to, continue making payroll and doing that. And then, learned a lot of the tax strategy and everything that I implement for our clients now kind of came from, his sort of like tax whiz brain, and then taking those steps and turning it into something that we can actually communicate to, the business community at large. And so it was a cool experience. And, I know that, we had a lot of fun kind of growing that together for sure.
Great. So you talk about massive value, and you've really gained a reputation online in the social area because you provide massive value, not just even to your clients, but the people that you serve out there in the social media space. So a lot of things happening right now. The big, beautiful bill is one of the things that's happening, amongst many others. So what's happening right now in the landscape of helping us prepare and pay less taxes that you think are, is some important tips for people that are trying to save money on taxes?
Yeah. So the one big beautiful bill was the big tax bill that passed last summer. And essentially what it did is it extended the original, what people called the Trump tax plan when he first came into office the first time. It's called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Congress wrote it, right? And passed it, but it's, he kind of gets the credit for it. And essentially there were a lot of pieces in there that were great for saving business owners taxes. And it was really designed to not help the really, really, really like high income earner W-2, but more kind of that small to medium business owner and a lot of people in real estate too. And a lot of the provisions in there were set to sunset last year and expire. And so now a lot of them have been extended or made permanent. And so a couple of those, one big notable one is the 100% bonus depreciation. And that's great for real estate, of course, but then also for if you're going to buy, a brand new truck for your business or piece of equipment, and it allows you to write off the full value of it in the year you buy it. And then if you invest in real estate using what's called a cost segregation study in tandem with 100% bonus depreciation, allows you to massively accelerate depreciation. And so what a cost segregation study is basically when you go and buy a piece of real estate, if it's residential, you depreciate. So depreciation is the expense basically that spreads the purchase value out over a certain number of years. And so if it's residential, it's 27 and a half years. If it's commercial, it's 39 and a half years. So let's say you buy $1 million commercial building, you spread that out over 40 years, you get $25,000 per year for the next 40 years when you buy the building. What a cost segregation study does is an engineering firm goes in and they look at the value of the fixtures, the carpets, the everything that makes up the what's in the building that isn't just the bones of it. And usually it's valued at around 25 to 30% of the total purchase price. And you get to segregate that out. And with the 100% bonus depreciation, that's eligible to take the full value of that as a deduction this year. So if you buy $1 million building, normally you'd take $25,000 a year over the next 40 years. Now you could potentially do this cost segregation study and accelerate $300,000 of depreciation this year. So suddenly that makes your down payment on that property almost free. You're borrowing from future years, deductions, but most people would rather have a deduction this year than wait 40 years to take it. Right. And so that is a massive acceleration of deductions that makes it a lot easier to justify going out and buying that new property. Now you got to make sure there's some passive loss limitation rules that you got to make sure you're, following to actually take the deductions against active like business income. So that's why working with, tax professional, kind of talking through it, making sure you're checking all the boxes and doing it the right way. But that's a massive update from the one big beautiful bill. And then as far as like a couple simple tax strategies that business owners can take, regardless of one big beautiful bill or not, these are kind of things that are sort of starting to make their way out there in terms of, people are being aware of them, but then there's right ways and wrong ways to do it. So like one example, if you've got kids, you can hire your kids in your business and pay them up to $16,000 tax-free per year, $16,000 in 2026. And so if you've got, 3 kids times $16,000 per year. That's $48,000 tax-free you're getting out of your business. Now, they got to actually do something to justify what you're paying them. And then the big difference of doing it the right way versus the wrong way is if you've got an S corporation, for example, which is what most people kind of run their business from. If you pay them directly from the corporation, you pay payroll taxes on those wages, which is about 15% of the wage. If you pay them from a sole proprietorship, then they're under 18 and your kids, they are exempt from payroll taxes. So what you do is you open up a family management company that's a sole proprietorship, which basically just means get a tax ID number so that you can file payroll tax forms. And then you have the S corp pay the sole prop, and then the sole prop pays the kids. And so if you got those 3 kids paying $16,000 a year, $48,000 times 15%, that's around $7,000 or $8,000 that you suddenly save in payroll taxes just by making that one extra shift. So that's like kind of a thing that you may have heard about, but then there's doing it the right way versus the way that doesn't quite maximize the savings.
Yeah, those are really valuable tips. I love them.
Yeah. And then the third one, I'd say just a super simple one is if you own your home, you can use, and you have an office outside the home, there's a rule. It's known as the Augusta rule. And what that is it's a rule that says you can rent your home up to 14 days a year, tax-free. And it's called the Augusta rule because every year when the Masters golf tournament comes to Augusta, Georgia, everyone who lives there clears out of town and rents their homes out to everyone coming in to paying buku bucks to go to the Masters golf tournament. And so someone went and greased the palms of Congress and said, hey, can we just get this tax-free? And so they said, well, if it's under 15 days a year, we'll give it to you tax-free. And so what you can do as a business owner is once a month, hold your shareholder board meeting at your house, or if you're hosting clients, having parties there or having team parties at your house, and then you rent the house out to the business, and then the business pays you rent. It's tax deductible as rent expense to the business and becomes tax-free rental income to you. So that's another way to get, between $10,000 and $15,000 a year tax-free out of your business, depending on, the value of your home.
Wow. Some really, really valuable tips to save us a ton of money. Let me ask you this, Howard. Why do you think it is that most entrepreneurs don't work with a tax strategist? Because what I hear is a lot of people it's almost a hindrance or burden to be able to get the bookkeeper and get the accountant and those kind of things. But tax strategists, just these tips alone save a tremendous amount of money. And we're just scratching the surface so much you have to teach. So what do you find out in the world of why more people aren't going out and getting a tax strategist to help them with these kind of strategies?
Yeah, I think it's because they don't know what they don't know. And that's part of why I'm trying to put out the content that I am, just to educate the business owner community. And they go and they open a business, usually because they're really good at the thing they do. And then they have an entrepreneurial seizure and go open the business. They never went to school for accounting. And even people who got accounting degrees aren't taught taxes. When you start, when we hire our entry-level team members out of college, they don't know anything about taxes, even after getting their accounting degree and wanting to go into taxes as a profession. They just don't teach it in college. And so they go and they hear that they're supposed to hire a CPA to do their taxes. But then there's also the element of the percentage of CPAs who actually look at taxes proactively versus just filling out the forms is also a very, very small percentage of CPAs. And so people they start a business and they go check the box of going and getting a CPA, getting an accountant. But then the odds that accountant is a tax strategist or someone that's actually trying to look forward proactively and doing tax planning with their clients is unfortunately very, very small. It's starting to change. There's starting more and more accountants out there that actually do proactive tax planning. But for the longest time, the vast majority of CPAs kind of just fill out the forms. And so I think that's probably why. It's just a lack of knowledge.
So how does somebody go out and find the right tax strategist? Like, you're an expert at what you do. You've got a great firm. It's a good site. So let me ask you this. Do you work in all 50 states?
Yeah, we have clients in pretty much all 50 states and we can serve them everywhere.
So if somebody's vetting a company to make sure they're the right tax strategist, then what do you do to stand out to become as credible as you are? Because you guys have been around a long time, really credible, great reputation. So what are the things they should be looking for to make sure that they find the right strategist?
Yeah, as far as to answer the question about how do we stand out, I think it's back to what I talked about with the Tony Robbins lesson of adding massive value. Because we put out tons of free tax advice, and I know there's a lot of CPAs out there that are afraid to give it away because it's like, they're on to hold on to the secret sauce. But can't tell you how many business owners we meet with when we do our free tax assessment, and they say, well, I saw what you gave away for free. I can't imagine what it's like to work with you, right? So don't be afraid to give your stuff away for free. And then as far as what business owners should look at is I would say, meet with the CPA you're considering, or if you've got your current CPA, and go to them and say, hey, what are a couple ideas you've got for me to actually make my tax bill lower this year? And if they've got no ideas and you own a business, go find a new CPA, because there's the tax code is 70,000 pages plus thick, and most of that is designed and written to help business owners save money. It's just the reality of the tax code. And so there's definitely something that you can do to save some taxes. And so asking that question, what can you do? And then I think another question is, it's helpful if they've got experience in your business. They don't have to only work in your niche, your industry, but they should have some experience working in your industry. So it's, another good question when you're interviewing accountants is, have you worked in my industry before? And if they kind of flub the answer, then maybe they're not the best fit. If they can talk about oh yeah, I've seen this a million times and I know exactly, we worked with hundreds of clients in your industry, then that's a good clue that they'll probably know what they're doing. So those are a couple simple things that you can ask to see if they're the right fit. So and if you're out there looking for a good fit, we meet with business owners all the time, and give them free second opinions on their taxes. And so.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. TRM CPA, your firm, what's the process look like? Like, how does it begin if I'm interested in finding a CPA and working with a tax strategist? Like, what's that process look like when I'm coming in to be able to talk to your team?
Yeah, so basically it starts with what we call our free tax assessment. And we've had the luxury and the blessing of meeting with, because of both social media and the Tony Robbins events, meeting with thousands of business owners over the last decade of doing this. And so we've been able to build out a kind of a series of quality questions, right? Like Tony talks about, improving your questions that allow us to, in just a few minutes, kind of identify what the potential clients are leaving on the table in potential tax savings. So we go through, we like to be, your CPA should be a profit center for you, not a cost. They should save you more than you pay them. So we like to make sure that we are a profit center for all of our clients before they pay us a dime. So we go through that free tax assessment process and figure out what they're leaving on the table at a minimum in potential tax savings. And then from there, we do a tax plan with them where we go through and kind of look at their last few years of returns, because you can go back up to 3 years if there's errors on the returns and amend them and get cash back. It doesn't happen very often, but we like to make sure that we do that as part of, our due diligence process. And then more importantly, tax planning is what can you do this year before the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve and then your tax year's over. And so we like to put a plan together proactively moving forward that has all the tax strategies they could possibly implement, how to implement those. And then from there, kind of if they want to work with us on a year-over-year basis to actually run projections, do the tax filings and all of that. But the tax plan allows us to make sure that we're a profit center before they even start working with us.
I love it. If I'm interested in getting that tax review, a lot of people here right now are interested. What steps should they take to be able to get that tax review?
So trmtaxreview.com would be a place they go, and they can just, click their company size, and then that takes them to our calendars, and then we can go from there.
That'd
be the simplest way.
Yeah. And where should they go if they want to learn more about you, your firm, they want to follow you on social? Where should they go to do that?
Yeah, so pretty much on all socials, if they just search my name, Tyler McBroom, you're going to find me. And so that's, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, for the socials and all the free content out there. And then my firm's website is just trm.cpa. We've got a bunch of, free resources on there as well that they can take a look at. And yeah, those would be the best ways to find me.
All right. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Ty. It's been awesome. A lot of fun.
All right, so listen, if you're watching this, if you really look at the money that you spend personally and business-wise, and you look at where the majority of your spending goes, it's taxes. Like everything we do is taxed. And the reality is we don't really pay attention to this, but if you really did, you'll realize that that's probably the number one barrier of keeping you from accomplishing the true wealth you want to accomplish. You're just paying too much on the personal and business side of taxes. The reason I see this happen after helping million-plus entrepreneurs is that the problem is business owners are just going out and getting a CPA. They're getting an accountant. They're getting somebody that takes numbers and then takes the numbers and files returns or whatever they do with it. They're not strategists. And there's a clear difference between the two. A strategist is helping you recognize, and as you see, Tyler just gave you just a few tips, just a few. And he's got, like I said, the tax code 70,000 pages, right? So you can imagine how many strategies there actually are that you and I, we're not going to know. Like, it's not our job. Our job is to do what we do in our business, not to understand the tax code, right? So you've got to find a CPA firm that can actually help you with all the tax stuff, but also the strategy stuff, the stuff that comes in and helps you save money, to preemptively develop a strategy that helps you save money this year and many, many years beyond. You've got to stay ahead of it. And that's exactly what TRM CPA does. TRM CPA helps you with all the tax stuff, but also the strategy to be able to save money on the personal and the business side so you can really accomplish true wealth. Look, I don't know if you know this or not, but like, you get a great story about how he actually got in with Tony Robbins. You don't stay in with Tony Robbins unless you know what you're doing, unless you have a phenomenal reputation, unless you deliver what you actually promise. This is exactly the reason Tyler has 1 million followers. This is the reason that he is able to speak on huge stages, because of the value he delivers and because he stands behind it. TRM CPA, they actually deliver upon what Tyler is actually putting out in the world. And here's the best news. You can actually go out and get a 100% free assessment. You can see where you are and dive into some of these strategies just by going to trmtaxreview.com. So go to trmtaxreview.com to be able to get your free strategy on basically what you can do depending on if you're under 250K or over 250K in revenue. They've got different strategies for you that can actually help you save a lot of money. And all you have to do to get the free reviews, go to trmtaxreview.com. Now, beyond going to trmtaxreview.com, make sure you also go to trm.cpa. That's where you can learn more about TRM. You can also learn more about Tyler and follow Tyler on social as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Take care and have a great day.